And I also think that data scientists can create their own opportunities to get noticed in the field.
Welcome to the So, You Want to Be a Data Scientist podcast, where we interview awesome data scientists and other data professionals. This show is part of the website soyouwannabeadatascientist.com. Visit the website to get access to articles and other resources on becoming a data scientist, like my free data science Kickstarter course. And if you like the episode, leave a review on Apple Podcasts. But for now, enjoy the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of So You Want to Be a Data Scientist podcast. Today, I have Nicole Janeway Bills with me. She's a data scientist at Atlas Research, and she's joining us from Washington, D.C. Welcome, Nicole.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you for being here. So let's start with your company. Can you tell us a bit about what Atlas Research does?
Sure. So, Atlas Research is a federal consultancy. As you mentioned, we're based out of Washington, D.C. We primarily serve Veterans Affairs, and we have a number of other contracts across government agencies, helping them to advance their mission-driven work.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So I want to go into the details of that work, but I also want to know how you ended up where you are. Can you tell us a bit about your journey? What happened in your life? How did you end up as a data scientist?
Sure, happy to. So, I graduated college in 2015, and after doing 9 months of world travel, I started work at a professional services firm as a consultant. And I really enjoyed it. I loved the variety of projects and the opportunities to travel. In terms of the day-to-day work, the aspect that I found most fulfilling was anything to do with data analytics. So, dashboarding or setting up metrics. I also was engaged in some internal projects along those lines. So when the opportunity arose to study data science, I jumped on that. I left my job and did a 15-week boot camp. So now the work that I do is pretty much all of the favorite parts of my work from before, but without any of or with significantly less of the fluff, I should say. Um, and on top of, having stronger data analytics skills, I have a coding skill set that I'm continually working on developing and advancing. And overall, the goal of connecting data to business outcomes is, that's the primary objective of my work. So I find that to be just incredibly fulfilling and always full of engaging challenges.
Wow, that's very cool. So you were doing a totally different work. I mean, maybe included a little bit of data analysis, as you said, but while you were being a consultant, you realized that your actual passion, or maybe the thing that you wanted to do in the next couple of years, is actually data science. And then you jumped into data science.
Yes, exactly. I am really lucky. I had the support of some of my colleagues at work that this was something that was worth pursuing, and built up the confidence to leave my work. Had a wonderful experience at boot camp, and then started up again in consulting in my current role, but definitely more on the technical side.
Wow. And how did you find this boot camp? How did it come about?
So I went to Flatiron School, and Flatiron at the time was running a program called the Data Science Fellowship, where they were hoping to connect students directly with employer partners. They have a different model now, and I know things have shifted a lot for them in the pandemic, as they have for every educational institution. It's been a really tough time to rejigger in-person programs into a totally online and remote experience, um, which is really tough because one of the things that I loved about Flatiron was the camaraderie and the quality of the other students. I definitely was that far surpassed my expectations. Um, so going all online is definitely a challenge, and in this new world, it's it's something that I think every educational institution is trying to redefine for themselves.
And is that also where you learned your coding skills?
Yep, so I started learning Python about a year before I went to boot camp. I would say I was an intermediate to advanced beginner when I entered boot camp. I had already developed some fluency in Python through Code Academy and an MIT course taught by Eric Grimson online that also helped to define some computer science concepts like data structures and algorithms, which are really essential for anybody who's going to be working in technology.
It's really nice. And now you're a data scientist, and on top of being a data scientist, you're actually data strategy certified. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, so I learned about this certification through work. My manager recommended it as a solid way to diversify my skill set, and I have, in fact, found it to be super fruitful. In the process of studying for the exam, was very straightforward. There is a reference guide that's about 600 pages, and it occupies a position of honor at my desk. I flip through it every couple of days to help answer questions from my clients. So I've definitely found the material to be really useful on the job. And after a couple months of familiarizing myself with the content, I sat for the exam, which is called the Certified Data Management Professional, and passed it. Found that to be, a really good fair test. It's also an open book exam, so that should be exciting to anybody who's thinking about pursuing this credential. What it really means is you can not worry so much about memorizing all of the little details, but focus more on the real world applications and understanding how these concepts connect so that you can quickly the find the material that you may not be as familiar with, but you really are focusing on understanding and not just rote memorization. So that is my pitch for the Certified Data Management Professional um, organization, which is offered by an institution called DAMA.
Nice. And you're saying that you use these skills all the time at your work too, right?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I'm a data scientist, which is a technical role and involves coding, but I'm also a consultant. I work for a consultancy, and so that involves a lot of client interactions and clients asking questions about their data infrastructure. So, in order to provide good advice to them, I am constantly, brushing up my skills and seeking the latest patterns and best practices across the data lifecycle. So, not just data science, but all aspects of data strategy from data ingest, like the data collection process, through data engineering, storage, security, data ethics, um, and eventually, the archiving and purging of data. So certainly being data strategy certified has uh, offered me a lot of confidence in terms of my ability to advise our clients in that domain.
So, you said you took the boot camp and then you became a data scientist, but was the boot camp only thing in terms of data science qualification that you took? Or did you take any online courses or other degrees?
It was just that 15-week boot camp. And since then, since data science is a very narrow field, I've been working on diversifying my skills. And I got AWS certified as a cloud practitioner this year, in addition to the data strategy certification. And I found that learning some DevOps skills in terms of how to productionize your code, that definitely pays dividends for data scientists. So I would recommend looking at the AWS cert or another cloud provider certification as kind of table stakes for the data science field.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, I think it really, again, depends on the company, I guess, the type of company or the type of team or the work that is expected of you. Because when I was in my previous job, when I was a consultant, I didn't really have to use AWS at all. But now I recently changed jobs and I'm in a smaller company now. And it is something that I should probably know about because my manager is doing most of the work on AWS, but like I'm pretty sure he would appreciate me helping him on that. So I can definitely see how it would help us in our projects.
Totally. Yeah. And I think it's something that will only become increasingly important over time. So definitely worth looking into.
And so after the boot camp, you didn't go back to your previous company, right? You found a new place to do your data science work.
Yeah, that's correct. So I feel very fortunate to be at Atlas Research. I love that we do mission-driven work for federal agencies. Every day I feel like I am making the government a little bit better, a little bit more efficient, serving these underserved populations like veterans. And we also do a lot of social determinants of health work around minorities, work for research institutions as well. So really spanning an array of clients, but all of them doing good work for the American people, and that is so important to me. It's also just been fun to live in DC. So that's new, even though my base has been here for 5 years. This is the first time that I have really settled in. And I mean, really settled in now that we are in COVID times. But yeah, I think that the work is fulfilling and the city is just unparalleled. So this is a great opportunity.
That's great. I mean, it's amazing that you feel that way. I don't think many people, or maybe not majority at least, feel very happy with their jobs. So it's really lucky, and it's a really something to be grateful about when you feel happy about your job. And if you don't mind, can you share a bit about how you found this first job as a data scientist?
Yeah. Well, I feel like I had a an advantage coming from the background that I had. Again, I'm just like super grateful for how everything worked out. I feel really privileged to have worked not just in as a commercial consultant at Deloitte, but I also had public sector experience as a federal consultant at Booz Allen. And as I was reaching out for data science roles, I connected with one of my former colleagues at Booz Allen. The colleague, I say that loosely, he was my manager at Booz Allen, and he was kind enough to talk to me about the work that he's doing now at Atlas, and it just clicked that they're looking to grow their data science practice, and they were willing to bring me on board. So it's been a really wonderful learning opportunity there.
But now that you said that you actually been luckier than most, I also because I also when I think of myself, I tend to also think of myself as like, oh, this was, lucky that I got this job. I just knew some people. But when you think about it, if you weren't a good person or a good worker, if they didn't know you, they wouldn't have hired you anyways. So I guess, it's also a little bit about your merit too, not only because you're lucky.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. I will also say that I was very intentional about keeping my connections from those early days, and also just regularly finding ways to add value. So I'm a huge fan of the 5 minute favor, trying to make connections across my network and just do small things to help people as those opportunities come up. And I also think that data scientists can, create their own opportunities to get noticed in the field. It's a young profession, so there's a lot of opportunity start start things. And that could be a good way to get noticed by potential employers. I'm happy to speak more about some ideas there for anybody who is, in the job hunt and maybe not finding that immediate fulfillment in terms of getting looks at their resumes.
So you already mentioned a little bit about what you do at work, but we haven't gone into details or of projects that you've done. If it's not confidential, can you share some of the projects that you've done at work?
Yeah, so some of my first initiatives at work were around natural language processing. And we had the opportunity to deploy text analytics to help one of our partner agencies to to do what's called named entity recognition. So that's pulling out the most important aspects of a piece of text. And this is like a really helpful capability for turning unstructured data, so text data, into data that can then be parsed in a more systematic way. So that was one really fulfilling project that I enjoyed significantly, and it allowed me to work with state of the art open source tools. So we did something similar, using the same pipelines, the same tools for a slightly different use case, where we were, rather than pulling out the named entities or like the very specific aspects of the text that were most relevant, we used the same NLP tools for a text classification project. So that was on a sentence by sentence level, how would you classify the content of this text? And the purpose of this project was to create a systematic review tool for our research and evaluation team. So that's been some of the work that I've been primarily engaged in throughout my time here. Also doing a lot of research into tools to prevent algorithmic bias, to reduce the risk of machine learning malpractice, and to really uphold high quality ethical standards. I think those are, three key areas that are going to be, increasingly important, especially in the federal consulting space.
Yeah, definitely. And they're extremely important, I think, because, as you said, data science is still a very young profession. And even though it's been around for, I don't know, 10 years now, maybe a bit less even, there's still a little bit of confusion when it comes to what's okay, what's not okay. Where can the technology take us, but is it okay for it to take us there? So it's nice to come up with some ethical guidelines and rules, and maybe, as you said, a bias algorithms to check if an algorithm is biased or not.
I'm so excited to see a lot of interest and attention on this aspect of our field right now. I think we should go even further and perhaps create an oath for data scientists. I would love to see that become commonplace and an expected standard, that we have specific ethical guidelines and a rigorous training program for, and I think that would also help to professionalize the field.
And so you said you did some projects with NLP, which is, I think, a very exciting area in AI, in data science in general. Do you develop your own NLP algorithms, or does your team research into new NLP algorithms?
So we, as I mentioned, that we were using some of the state of the art existing algorithms, and in deploying them in new ways. So I think a lot of data science is about being able to remix what's out there. Um, this is a super dynamic aspect of the field. We've seen since 2018's release of Google's BERT model, there's just been a continual ramping up of interest and capability in this space, which is just super exciting given how much text data is out there. There's a lot of untapped potential, and I'm thinking especially for our healthcare practice, but also looking beyond that into other fields, the opportunity to take an unstructured corpus and then be able to reformat it into a I mean, the process of vectorization is really like quite magical, of taking text and then turning it into a cloud of numbers, multi-dimensional array, and then being able to derive insights from that, um, is just thrilling. I've really enjoyed working in this space. So yeah, to answer your original question, data science is a lot about remixing, and I've been surprised by how much of it requires reading and researching, and excited that I'm able to use those capabilities in my day-to-day work.
Yeah, that's great to hear, because I think there is some sort of a misconception that a data scientist has to have excellent, perfect, like a math professor level math skills. But I feel like that is not 100% relevant as long as you're not really developing your own algorithms when it comes to, developing your own algorithms. And most of the time, as you said, what you do as a data scientist, even if you're working with state of the art, most of the time you're just taking what is out there, what is produced, and you are mixing and matching it, trying to make it specialized to your own problem. It could be a special domain or it could be a specific problem that you're dealing with, but it's mostly about taking what's out there and making sure that you know how to apply it to your own specific situation, right?
Yes, I think that's the case. I think that communication skills may be underrated because, from what you've explained, the underlying mechanisms of these machine learning models are quite complex. It involves, incredibly complicated calculus and matrix multiplication. Um, I mean, I will say on one hand, incredibly complex, but also once you understand it, then it's just math. It's not magic. So I think that are people outside of this field tend to oversimplify by applying the term artificial intelligence, and that creates this penumbra of magic around what's actually going on inside of these machine learning models. And so to combat that and to help our non-technical counterparts to understand what's actually going on in the models that we're providing to them, data scientists do need to be very strong communicators and be able to take the underlying mathematics and translate it into a format that our non-technical counterparts are comfortable with, so that then they'll have the confidence to use the models in their decision making, which ultimately at the end of the day is the goal. We need to connect the data to the business outcomes that are most important to our stakeholders.
Yeah, that actually very nicely brings me to my next question. What do you typically deliver at the end of your project? Is it like a piece of code? Is it a report, or is it like a piece of software that a business person can use?
I personally, in data science, work on a mix of the like what I would consider to be the two types of data science products. So that's been really cool to get to span both. I'll explain that in more detail. So I think that data science products can be broken out into two types. The first type is data science for decision making. So this is any data science product with the goal of influencing a stakeholder's decision and providing them with enhanced access to information through advanced analytics. Some example forms that these deliverables take include reports and dashboards. Also, perhaps like information that's communicated in verbal format through meetings. All of these represent the data science for decision making path. And then there's also data science tools. So when we talk about productionizing models and deploying AI so that it then interacts with external stakeholders, that's kind of the second path. Um, and yeah, both elements are really quite powerful. The first is more along the lines of like old school, like building on the capabilities of data analytics. And the second, the data science tools, these are like incredibly powerful. And this is the field that I think has the most potential to redefine our society. So all that to say, it's all the more important to really understand, how the models that we're deploying potentially impact the end user, and to make sure that ethical considerations are considered upfront in a really robust way, and that the models are debiased and that they're prevented from deepening societal feedback loops. And this is really important for protecting underprivileged groups and making sure that we don't further entrench the
Yeah,
status quo.
definitely agree. So, while doing your projects, while you're on your projects, what kind of tasks do you work on? Or can you just tell us what a normal weekday looks like for you?
Sure. So my work is typically structured across client work and also internal capability building. And typically, the client work involves, of course, meeting with the clients and understanding their requirements with the ultimate goal of building out a decision-making tool or a data product that they will find useful. And in my internal capability work, it's quite similar. Our stakeholders are, our data science team as we're looking to build out future capabilities and better understand open source tools. Also, I do a lot of writing for our team, um, which is great for me. It's really been helpful to enshrine my own knowledge. It's really been helpful for me to really formalize my understanding of different concepts across data science.
Nice. But you also do some writing towards data science, right? Is that also a part of your work, or is that something you do individually?
Oh, that's something I do individually. So it's just for fun with towards data science. I mean, it definitely has been such a such a privilege to get to interact with people on that platform and to consistently share my newfound understanding of these concepts with an audience that gives a lot back to me in terms of interactions and like building on what I'm sharing and giving me additional ideas for topics to research and ultimately write about. So the towards data science writing has been just for fun, and man, like it has really delivered in that department.
Nice. But what do you write about there?
Well, I try to do a mix of technical writing and also writing about the my commentary on topics in the field. So as an example of that, I had a series of articles that were like 10 undervalued Python tips. And then I did like tips that they don't teach in boot camp and Python tips for beginners. So those would be examples of technical articles. I also have been writing about kind of broader topics in data science. So the stuff that we've talked about the importance of ethics. I also talked about um, for better programming, I wrote an article on the very large natural language processing models that have been released since BERT in 2018. So earlier this year, GPT-3 was released. And this is actually quite interesting that the corpus of GPT-3 is from before, is from before coronavirus. So it's kind of like a replica of a world that existed before everything has changed so dramatically in 2020. Regardless, it represents a really significant advance in terms of our text processing and text generation capabilities. So I did a write up on these massive NLP models and kind of how they had shaped our public imagination for what data science will look like in the future. So yeah, so for data science, around the data science field, I try to do a mix of writing that will increase my own technical competency, but also writing that kind of stretches my thinking about the implications of our work on broader society.
Oh, that sounds very interesting. Actually, I will leave a link to Nicole's Medium page under the podcast episode in the podcast notes, so you can find it there. So, for your projects, can you tell us which tools that you use often? So, Python or R, or do you use Jupyter notebooks? Or, I mean, you already mentioned some AWS, but what else do you use?
Yeah, so my stack is Python, Jupyter Notebook, done some work in EC2 boxes, and that's it. I'm learning Java right now. There was a particular package for data cleaning that was written in Java, so I'm brushing up on my skills there in the hope of being a better data cleaner, which I'm sure everyone's heard that truism of data science work is 80% data cleaning at least. So anything that you can do to make that a little easier on yourself, that's certainly worthwhile. Um, yeah, I mean, I can point readers towards several articles that I've written about tools that I found to be particularly useful or packages that have really shaped my understanding of what's possible in this field. So I would say those Python tips series contains a lot of recommendations around those topics. I will also say that I'm writing an article right now on 5 tools for effortless data science. So I think that's really the article that we should point listeners towards.
Awesome. We'll make sure to include that in the notes so our listeners can get access to them. Awesome. Okay. So, next thing that I'm curious about is what the most exciting thing is for you at your job.
It's hard to narrow down because I feel super fortunate. Like, we're kind of, as data scientists, on the cutting edge of a new field in software development. Um, Building out tools that use statistics and use data as the underlying resource. This is really cool. I will say I'm really excited about the potential for data to shape societal values. And if that sounds a little bit grandiose, let me provide some more concrete context there. So, the inventor of GDP, the gross domestic product metric, Dr. Simon Kuznets, actually said that the metric was quite limiting in terms of being able to actually measure the relative success of a given nation. And that's because GDP doesn't account for how the money is being spent or, how it contributes to actual human flourishing, or even whether that those funds are being spent on, positive things like taking your family out for a nice family dinner at a restaurant, or whether you're spending that money on a divorce attorney. Um, so by contrast, if we can utilize more robust metrics and evaluation, um, perhaps based in data science techniques that can help us to gain a better understanding of what promotes human flourishing, perhaps we can learn how to optimize for things like fulfillment and other non-monetary values. Money is a really easy thing to track, but that's not the only thing that we collect data on. So I think that that's a really exciting potential for the broader field of data. And I definitely want to take a positive lens on what we can accomplish with data collection. I think that that's really too often overlooked in a field that has seen a lot of, you know, I think there's been a lot of fear mongering directed at data science lately. I mean, I'm looking at like inquiries and testimonies on Capitol Hill and these, you know, pop culture documentaries like The Social Dilemma that I think take a really limited look at what data science is capable of. So I'm quite excited for a positive future for data.
Awesome. And what about the most boring part of your job? I mean, you do seem like you're very excited about it. So I don't know if this will be hard to answer for you, but I'm curious.
I mean, the things that I like less tend to be the things that are not as directly related to data science. I mean, I really enjoy coding. I love reading archive and trying to find those nuggets of wisdom that I can sneak into my model development. I don't love scheduling meetings. I don't love it when I turn on my computer and I have kind of an avalanche of emails and I can't jump straight into my work. So it's more the administrative or like the classic consulting type of requirements that I like less. I think data scientists they need time for deep work.
Yeah, I don't think anyone can blame me for not liking arranging meetings and all that shenanigans. Okay, so you are working in a little bit more of a technical area. So you said you're still kind of in the context of being a consultant, but it's a technical consultancy. And how is being a woman in this area? Do you encounter any bias?
So I had a weird conversation when I first was interested in data science. Someone who didn't know me very well said, I didn't see you as the kind of person who would be interested in analytics. And I was like, huh, I wonder if you would have said that to me if I was a guy. But that's really been it. I haven't experienced any other, at least to my face, conversations around whether I'm right for the field.
Okay, that's good to hear. I kind of had a similar experience when I was studying computer science. In one class, I just felt like kind of dressing up, and I went to the class, other than my normal jeans and a sweater sort of thing. I think I looked a little bit girly, and I remember approaching a teaching assistant to ask him a question about coding, and then he was like, are you sure you want to pursue a major in computer science? You don't really look like the computer science type. And then, yeah, that day I was like, okay, I'm going to graduate this school, even if only to like prove to this guy that like girls can be computer scientists too. That's ridiculous.
No, this field certainly has a remarkable history of women pushing it forward. From Ada Lovelace to Grace Hopper to all these countless other inventors and creators and tinkerers who, and like lots of female mathematicians as well, who helped lay the groundwork for stuff that we do now in data science. So, it's completely backwards to think that that there's some kind of like gender difference in terms of facility of working with data or code.
Yeah, and I also feel like there is some work to be done for women too, because what I've seen, I've also been reading similar things online. I feel like people have been realizing this lately. Women tend to kind of tune down their womanness when they're working in technical areas. I guess just to look like maybe they belong in the area. I've also done that. I've realized it in myself. And I feel like, you don't have to be perfectly looking like a hacker or something. You don't have to be wearing jeans and sweatshirts all the time. You don't have to be constantly checking hacking news to call yourself a developer, call yourself a data scientist. That's not a requirement of the job. But yeah, it's some things are hard to get over.
Yeah, personally, I've been incredibly insulated from those pressures, given that my time in tech has been spent working from the home office. And I will say also, Washington, D.C. has an incredibly friendly tech community. I think because it's not Silicon Valley, and we have really dynamic startups that are here and a lot of consultants with expertise who come here to help out the federal government, whether it's through these federal consultancies or an agency like USDS, which provides it's like the Peace Corps for the federal government. Regardless, the tech people who are here are really friendly. So I felt quite insulated from the reports that I hear of women sharing that they're not comfortable in their workplace.
Well, that's great. That's really great for everyone working in Washington, D.C. So, Nicole, last thing I want to hear from you is if you have any advice for people who are aspiring data scientists or people who want to just get into a data career, what would you tell them?
I think it's really important to do two things. First is to build a base of creative projects. So I would recommend that people look at a problem area that they find to be personally very fulfilling, whether it's looking at data in their own city or in their primary field of expertise and creating a project around that information. I think that that's a lot more exciting and gives you a lot more to talk about than doing multiple Kaggle competitions. So that's one thing that I would recommend is just really build on your passion and think about how you would turn your data products and your learning into a story that you can tell an interviewer, because at the end of the day, that's going to make you a lot more memorable. And the second thing that I would say to someone looking to break into this field is that you can really create your own opportunities by building your network in a way that is really exciting and actually creates value for the people that you are interacting with. So whether that's reaching out to leaders in the field and learning about their work and helping them connect to more opportunities to share their passion, or whether it's setting up a data science lightning talks event with your friends, whether it's getting involved in existing meetups or maybe starting a new meetup. I think that, if you're just waiting to hear back from companies, you've sent out your resume, you're not doing enough, that you can just really shape your own destiny today. And I think everybody should be taking advantage of opportunities they create for themselves.
That's definitely great advice. And actually, based on your first point about how we expect aspiring data scientists to come up with their own projects, I have a whole course that I recently launched. And the course is all about basically learning how to do your own data science project. We follow a data science skeleton, starting all the way from setting up a data science environment, gathering data, exploring the data, cleaning it, and then building machine learning models on top of it, and then making those machine learning models better and more accurate. So if you're interested in building your own projects or also learning how to build further projects after the course, I would definitely say that you check that out for anyone who's listening to us. I'll leave the link below in the podcast notes. And yeah, with that, I would like to thank you for taking the time to coming on the show. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I hope our audience enjoyed it too. I felt like we learned a lot.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was really lovely. I feel super lucky to be on the So You Want to Be a Data Scientist podcast. And I'm excited to continue to learn from you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Hey, thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to take my free data science Kickstarter course to learn what it takes to become a data scientist. See you next time.